All right, so we're ready to do our color. I noticed we duplicated these guys. So before we do anything else, I'm just gonna get rid of these dupes. Um, and we'll bring that in here. Okay, so what we have right here is the basis for our what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a color with this. We're gonna use a gradient map. Now, up until now, I've only demonstrated gradient maps where we're taking a grayscale and where, when we want to plug it into a color node. Uh, there's just so much more you can do with this. We can take this and actually assign colors to the grayscale, so from black to white, using a gradient editor. So we've opened up the gradient editor, and I have here, ready for action, a bunch of pebbles. And I would like to get a gradient off of these pebbles. So I'm going to click Pick Gradient, and I'm going to drag it along the area that I kind of want to pick up the colors from. And lo and behold, instead of having the grayscale here now, we've got this very nice gradient with a bunch of different points on it that was copied straight from those pebbles. And what it's done is it's taken that black and white map and it's applied those colors as per all these key points to that grayscale that we saw here before. So what that means is that as, I kind of like it the way it is, except the one thing that I'm not liking is I want these cracks darker. So those cracks, I know I can refer back to my map here, there's a lot of black in there, but then there's also some grays. So let's start with the black. So we can either replace this with like one of these darker colors, or I can click on this. Well, actually, I don't have the gradient editor open. I can double click on this, which will open my gradient editor, and I can make it darker. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to grab these guys and I'm going to move them up a bit. And so I'm making, and perhaps I want to sort of really block out that area, so I don't really want a gradient in here. I can click on this. It's going to create a second point for me, and I can bring that up. So that's kind of dealing with my blacks. And then I have a bunch of much lighter grays, so they're going to be further up that gradient scale. So I can kind of maybe hopefully find them by moving this dark color around. And you see I'm kind of searching for my spot there. It's too low. It's somewhere in here. Yeah, that's that. Okay, so we're talking about this area in here, so I'm gonna just start darkening these guys down a little bit. Or maybe this one. Now we've got a wider range. It's a bit more definition. So you know what? I'm going to get rid of these two guys, or certainly that light one. Yeah, that's starting to get more defined now. Maybe even darken this one up. So I'm going to double click on that and bring that down. That's looking okay. We're going to warp this mask out anyway. I just wanted some nice clear lines because the next thing we're going to do to it is we're going to bring in a warp and we're going to warp it. Oh, it helps if you put something in there. I believe I used Clouds 3. Yes, I used Clouds 3 to do this, and I kind of wanted it smaller. So we don't really need to bring up the resolution. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a Transform 2D. I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it the same shape. And I'm just going to make that pattern smaller, and then we're going to warp against that pattern, which is, this is way too much. When I did it, I had it set to 1.5, so that's probably going to be a number that's going to, somewhere in that range is better. So what it's done is it's kind of following along what we have here, but it's giving it a slightly different pattern and kind of a swirly, you know, rock strata type of way. Now, we're going to use this as our undercolor for a second gradient that's going to contain our colors for the underwater areas and the rocks. So in order to get that information, I'm going to come down here to my height map. So we're going to use this as the black and white. Why is that so low? Let's bring that up to the correct resolution. So now we're going to use this map, which is very, very similar to the other one, except it's got these black areas that are defining where the water is. So that's going to give us a nice, clear area that we can put in whatever sort of base color we want for the water, and then overlay it on top of that rock. So for here, let's go back to Google. First, let's pick up our gradient editor. And then we can move this window. And I had in here these, I kind of want an underwater, I mean, I'm not going to go for that blue, but I'm going for some of this sort of browny green stuff happening in here. So let's pick something that we like. Yeah, I'm going to have to move those around, but those deep greens I'm digging. So let's go back to here and see what this looks like. So this black correspond, you know, I don't want it to be that dark. I like this one. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this whole group up here for now, and I'm going to bring down this color that I really like. And so this is my blackest black. Now I want to see some more variation in those colors, so I think we're going to have to lighten this one up. You know what? Let's put this away for now, because I actually want to see how the two of these are going to look together, because there's no sense in putting too much work into this because it's going to get overlaid on this. So let's go ahead and do that now, and then we can fool around with our colors. So we've got our warp in. I'm going to bring down a blend node, and we're going to overlay this guy on top of this guy. So we're now starting to get this very green. Right. Okay. We're gonna work this in two sections. We're gonna find where that spot is on the gradient. That kind of in other words, only the blackest black is going to be the water areas. Everything else, it frees us up to start putting rock colors in here. I picked that green gradient in the beginning because I wanted to get those greens that I wanted. Most of them, let's look at this gradient again. Most of them, we're going to end up shifting the greens that we really like sort of down into this area here. And then we're going to create sort of a blue-gray for the rock up here. But in order to do that, we kind of want to see how it looks on this blended node, because ultimately all these colors are going to be working together, this bottom layer and this top layer. So having done that, so we double clicked on that, let's single click on this, let's open up our gradient editor. This green was way too dark. Let's try one of the other ones. That's better, because we're imagining this. In other words, up here it's going to be gray, and we're looking for what's going on only in the areas of the water. I really liked this effect. I ended up keeping it because I was fooling around. I like this effect of, it's very cartoony, which is kind of how I roll, where you're getting this, it's almost like a ledge in the water. So I really like that. But you know, you can fool around with it, and then you can also, if you wanted, I like these shapes, so I'm going to keep them. But if you want something more naturalistic, where you go into is how you're blending your colors here. So this, you know, whatever that grayscale is, you get this how you want it. Now, there's one of the things that we're going to do for the normal map is we're going to apply one more, we're going to apply that grain, that stone grain, to give it like a grainy feel. I chose not to use that for the colors because I wanted my colors a little bit flatter, and we're going to just sort of apply a black and white version of this gray once we're done with the color. But there, you can also do it now. In fact, let's do that together since it's something we're going to build anyway. And you can see the difference of the kind of gradient maps that you get. So I believe I used the one, yeah, I used the one from Cracks. So I got this grain mask that we had made in our Cracks map. And I put a levels in here because I found that it worked best with multiplying it, but then it's too dark. Because when I did a straight up light and blend, it seemed to be sort of too wishy-washy. But again, you know, this is a personal thing. So for this one, I was adjusting for normals. But you can do a version of this also for your color if you want to go ahead and use, you know, if you want to go more naturalistic, you're going to need more naturalistic colors. So you can start applying, let's say, a grain like this to it, and then instead of using, we can, well, we're going to lose that water, but you would have to put a separate, let's go ahead and do that. We can blend, do we have, yeah, we have to use that. Okay, we're going to blend this with, let's just go straight to which map we're using. We're using this map. And so I can multiply that over that white. So we've now just created basically the same version of our height map, which is a little bit simpler because it doesn't have that grain on it. But now we can compare how this same gradient looks when you plug in that other map. So oh yeah, you got to do that. So you can tell the difference between the kind of surface that you're getting. And this is something that you manipulate with, you know, you decide what kind of colors you want, and then you make a map that's going to work with that gradient that you've got, and it's going to give you those colors. So, you know, there's a bit of trial and error involved, but it's actually kind of fun. Once you get the hang of it, you can kind of eyeball what you get a pretty good idea of what your black and white map should look like for the kind of colors that you want. So I just decided to keep it simple for this one. And I'm gonna get busier with the normals, but the colors are relatively simple. So let's take a look at my notes and see. Yeah, one more thing before we start to really fool around with this color is I would like to put in my final thing so we can actually deal with the final material, I mean with the final color. I got another blend in here, and I'm going to take this result. I'm going to get a gradient map. I'm going to put that in here. And then I'm going to take this, so with all my grain, with all that stuff, and I'm going to lay it on top of the result of my gradient maps. I'm going to dock that by hitting D. So, oh, what's going on here? Oh, you know what? It helps if you multiply it. There. So this ends up being, well, at least for now, because these rocks are green. But this is kind of the color I was going for. So what's happening under here, this stuff that's getting warped, is all these sort of colors here. Let's see if we can't maybe go for a grainier look here. Yeah, kind of like that. And that's by adjusting the levels of that grain. And then this, we're going to end up using this for our normals. So the normals are going to correspond to sort of the variations that we're creating with this multiply that we're putting up on the end. So that's the basic layout for the color. And we can now start to work on, I'm going to make this bigger. We can start to work on that one gradient map that we really need to get right, which is this guy here. And okay, so those are our underwater areas, but I do want to see it on this one. So we've got the gradient map pulled up. This is really frustrating because there's almost no room to do stuff in. I'm just going to open this gradient editor. I think that's about as much room as I'm going to get here. All right, so we know that we want this area, it's going to be our water. And again, we can take a darker color and start moving it around, and it's going to show us what heights we're dealing with. So I'm moving this guy, and I'm noticing that it's kind of dealing with this edge right here. So I'm happy with this being the area, if you will, of my water. And everything above this point is going to be our rock. So why don't we kind of like those browns. I'm going to get rid of these guys. Now remember, this is all overlaying the color that we have underneath. And I'm just making life easier for myself because I'm going to change this from a green to a blue. And I'm going to really bring that down to, you know, make it a gray. But I want it to be a blue-gray. Again, there's no rules here. I'm also going to make this a bluer color and a gray. So now I you know, we'll deal with this. We can add, because we can always add points in here. I wanted to sort of sort out the water part first. I think I want this bluer also. So I'm going to go in for more of the turquoisey color. You know, I still want some of those greens in there, so I'm not going to get rid of all of them. I'm just going to kind of make the main color more turquoisey and maybe a little darker. So, you know, again, this is just me messing around with it. I kind of like that cartoony edge, so I'm going to leave that black in there. And now this is that green that I'm looking at my shoreline. So maybe a little bit greener, a little bit bluer, and again a little bit bluer. I think that's okay for now. You know, I could literally spend an hour doing this. So I'm not going to bore you with that, but I think you get the idea. So we've kind of You know, we found that spot that's going to delineate our two colors. We kind of dealt with one of them first, and now we're going to deal with the rocks. So right now all we've got is pretty much a flat gray. It's going from this color to this color. So we can add a couple more points in here. So I'm just going to click there, and now I can change the value of that point, and all of a sudden I'm starting to see sort of these mid-ranges. And I can keep doing that. I can click here and then maybe break it up, and maybe click here and get another one, and sort of start to see this is kind of lifting up those high spots. So I know that my stratified rock, maybe I want to even lighten the very, very top up. So see what happens if we do this. Yeah, so that's starting to give us some of that delineation that we want. That water is almost, this is now too blue. I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to just get rid of some of the saturation in here. Maybe tone it down a bit. And maybe tone this one down a bit. So it's a little bit more gray. Well, that's something, at least I think, to start with. And now what we do is that this color now replaces, where's our temporary color right here? So let's hit D to undock that, and presto changeo. We now have our new color, at least for the rock bits. We'll do the water on the water is simple. We're going to just drag in that other node, but we're going to also take normals. So we're kind of running a bit long. So what I'll do then is we'll put in the water first thing, and then we're going to start using the normals from our water that we made the last time that we're bringing in as a node to finish up our normal map. So that's that. Let's see what this looks like. I can publish it out. Ta-da! So that is already looking a lot more like a shoreline. And oh, we haven't put in our shoreline yet. What we're going to do next is that we're going to put in our water, and we're going to create our movable shoreline that's going to allow us to expose that green color that we had put in on the rock. But it's looking a lot more like it's going to look in the end now. I like these colors. All right, so we'll stop the video here, and we'll pick up next time taking care of our water areas.